Welcome back to the Riri Show. I have a very special guest on the show today who's working on building Interlay and Kintsugi, which they have coined as Bitcoin on any blockchain as a one-to-one Bitcoin-based asset. So please welcome the amazing Dominik Harz. Hi, Dominik.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to get chatting with you. I've been researching about your project, and I'm just super excited to learn a little more. So it's nice to talk to the amazing Dominik.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, you bet. So truly, I mean, it's obvious you are a guest that really needs no introduction. But just for our viewers, can you tell us a bit about who you are?
Yeah. I'm Dom. I'm the CTO and one of the two co-founders of Interlay. Together with Alexei, we started the company like 2.5 years ago. And I mean, I'm going to talk more about Interlay and Kintsugi in a bit. But for me personally, I'm kind of finishing up my PhD right now in computer science, and I am based in Japan. So most of the time you'll find me on the beach here in the waves, or otherwise coding to bring Bitcoin to the world. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
I love that. Can you speak Japanese?
No, unfortunately not. Like I can speak some words, but it's not good enough yet.
Not perfect.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's really interesting. I love that. And I'm glad our times kind of worked out there to meet. So I appreciate that too. It's really been a big week for Interlay and Kintsugi, like a really big week. So you guys have been busy, and we have a lot of really to talk about. So we'll make sure to cover kind of your recent news throughout the interview. But just to kind of warm up here, because I know this is a common question, you've answered it probably many a times, but can you just briefly introduce us to Interlay and Kintsugi?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So Kintsugi and Interlay are both parachains. Kintsugi on the Kusama relay chain, and Interlay is a parachain on Polkadot, and both projects basically bridge over Bitcoin to the Kusama and Polkadot ecosystems. So the overall idea is that we want to make decentralized Bitcoin bridges available to anyone. So when you talk about Bitcoin bridges today, like the majority of people use WBTC in Ethereum, and there's a centralized set of custodians, right? They take Bitcoin into custody and they keep it safe that way. But if there's ever like a regulatory event, or they would take out Bitcoin, then there's really no repercussions for users of the protocol. So when we started this project, we really wanted to bridge Bitcoin in the spirit of Bitcoin itself, as decentralized as possible. And the idea with Kintsugi and Interlay is essentially, it's exactly that. Anybody can become a custodian of Bitcoin. Anybody can bridge over Bitcoin. And we use a system how basically Maker did decentralized stablecoins first, is like use collateral as a way to ensure that Bitcoin is actually kept safely, and you have a repercussion against misbehaving parties. So if a vault, we call the custodians of Bitcoin, we call them vaults, if they decide to not give you back your Bitcoins or take it out of the system, then you as a user can say, hey, sorry, that really wasn't cool. And by the way, here's a proof that you moved Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain, and now I'm going to take your collateral. So that's kind of our thing. And then really that's a core bridge. And then our main focus right now, right after the launch, is obviously to make KBTC, that's our Kintsugi Bitcoin, available to any parachain project in the Kusama ecosystem.
That's like really, really big. And especially I think because, Bitcoin being, number one, and then to bring that into the Polkadot Kusama ecosystem, and then have that, we have this whole idea of interoperability, and then what you guys are doing, like it all just ties in so nicely as well. So there's a notable amount of assets under the Interlay umbrella, really. And I know you kind of just touched on them, but can you just tell us what those are?
Yeah, sure. Right, we have KBTC. That's our Bitcoin representation in Kintsugi, and it's going to be available in the entirety of Kusama. And then we have IBTC, that's like the ticker, or InterBTC, which is the long name, which is essentially the same thing, but on the Interlay network, and going to be available everywhere in Polkadot. And then we have a governance token on Kintsugi, which is called Kint, and then the same or similar governance token, same functionality essentially, is Inter on the Interlay network. So it's really those four. And then we, on our parachain, we support more assets as well, since one of the next big things we want to focus on is to get multiple collateral assets going. So right now you can back Bitcoin with KSM on Kusama, and the first one on Polkadot will be DOT. But our really next big thing is, like, we want to allow people to use, for example, staking derivatives as assets, or use, say, LP tokens as assets, and also our own governance tokens as collateral to mint new Bitcoin.
Amazing. So there's really a world of opportunity here. I like this. So, I mean, when you and Alexei were really coming up with this idea, like, how did it all kind of come to fruition? Like, where did the idea come from?
Right. So Alexei and I, we did our PhDs together at Imperial. So when you kind of work in a research lab, and especially we were the first two PhDs in the newly founded cryptocurrency lab at Imperial, and you kind of get to collaborate quite a bit. And we went to a conference, or like a cryptography school and in Croatia, and we talked about Alexei's main PhD topic is on cross-chain interoperability, and he had this idea for a protocol to bridge over Bitcoin. So we talked about it, and we wanted to bring over Bitcoin as like in a decentralized way. And so Alexei came up with the core protocol, and then we did the kind of a demo together. So Alexei developed the protocol, I wrote the first implementation, and then we demoed it on scaling Bitcoin back in 2018 in Tokyo, actually. And that was really cool. And yeah, so essentially we always had this urge to, build decentralized systems. That's kind of where we're both coming from. And I guess when you're still in research and doing your PhD, right, you don't have to immediately bring a product to market. So you can do a lot of the core research first, and it kind of fit really well because Alexei has his background in systems research and cross-chain tech, and my research is more on economics and mechanism design, and then building a bridge that basically draws its security from kind of rational actors and collateral, and then combining these two systems, it worked out really well. Yeah, and then eventually, like, we wrote the paper, we published it at S&P, which is one of the big academic conferences. And yeah, that's how basically the Xclaim protocol was born, and that was the core idea of how we wanted to bridge Bitcoin.
That's crazy. You know what I always think about is like what the conversation must be like between two computer scientists. Like it's definitely a foreign language. Like for me, never mind asking you if you can speak Japanese, you speak other languages. So that's huge. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of like the nitty-gritty here. So I mean, this idea of a Bitcoin-based asset that can be put to work is actually functional too, is really like revolutionary for the Polkadot community because it's really like the first of its type, and really to crypto users in general. But it also matches its respective ecosystem, as Polkadot's whole purpose is really interoperability, right? And so you basically are working on just that. Was this something you kept in mind when you were choosing to go for Polkadot, or how did you end up going with Polkadot for Interlay?
It's an excellent question, and I can basically continue the kind of the history story from where I left off. So basically, once we published the Xclaim paper, Alexei and I, we both wanted to eventually not just be researchers, but actually bring a product to life. And so we were like toying with this idea for quite a bit to start a company. And a couple of months after we released the X-Claim paper, some people from the Web3 Foundation reached out to us because they were, as you know, Polkadot is like its core thing is interoperability, and a couple of people at the Web3 Foundation, they read the X-Claim paper and they were like, okay, this is how we want to have a Bitcoin bridge done. So we started conversations with them to build this into an actual system, and so we got a grant to write the specification on the system, and that developed into like a full MVP, and then eventually into a product. At the very early days, it was still called Polka-BTC, and now we're on KBTC and IBTC. But yeah, I think it was quite a natural choice. In some respect, it was very early when we started working on Polkadot. If I go a little bit into technical details, it was still like the very first substrate framework. So there was a lot of like changes that happened under the hood. But one thing like that was really cool, like, was working with Rust. We really like Rust as a programming language. And it also helped us finding like some of the best people, just because I don't know, it seems like a lot of people that are super interested in blockchain and are great programmers want to do Rust. So it was a really like a lucky thing for us. And then, yeah, we got a lot of really good collaboration with the Web3 Foundation as well as like as a research team. So while we had the paper, the paper worked, but the thing is, you must imagine like the 18 or 20 pages that the original X-Claim paper is turned into this 220 pages technical specification document. It's like when you suddenly think about actually implementing the system and think about all the edge cases, everything that can go wrong, it's like it's a very, very different beast. But yeah, I'm super happy.
The correct word, yeah.
yeah. It's but Polkadot is really cool in that regard. So there's a lot of new research happening, and I think the one cool for us, apart from using Rust and I was thinking that this is like the future where blockchains are going. The other super good thing about Polkadot is you can launch a new blockchain essentially. But you can use the security of the Polkadot ecosystem because you share security from the entirety of Polkadot, which in our opinion was like a key differentiator also to Cosmos, for example, because you can build stuff on Cosmos as well. But then you have to spin up your own like validator set, and especially in the bootstrapping phase of a network, the proof of stake security is a little bit tricky to get right, and it's nice kind of that you can basically rent block time in Kusama and Polkadot. So yeah, it was a good choice for us. But fun fact, we also talked with the Interchain Foundation at the same time, to build the bridge over to build it on Cosmos first. But now our next step we still want to integrate with Cosmos, but now what we want to do is basically wrap our parachain into IBC. That's the Cosmos cross-chain protocol, so that you can get KBTC and InterBTC natively on any Cosmos chain as well.
Well, I mean, us in the Polkadot community are so grateful that you ended up going with Polkadot. And actually, Web3 Foundation has some really incredible minds in there as well. I actually had the pleasure of talking to Bill Laboon a little while ago, and they're just incredible humans. So, but yes, we are happy you started here. So that's fantastic. So basically, you have InterBTC and KBTC, and they follow four main protocols. So you have issue, mint, DeFi, and redeem. And this all sounds like super incredible in theory and practice. But can you touch on like the security here? Like, what is the Interlay team doing to ensure that I'll be able to like redeem my Bitcoin?
Right. That's a very good question. So basically, once you let me start with the kind of the how you bridge the Bitcoin over, because then it kind of falls naturally into place. So let's say you want to bring Bitcoin over to Kusama, and let's say I'm a vault, so I'm going to be a custodian of your Bitcoin. What I'm going to do is I have to put up collateral on our parachain, and then what you're going to do is like say, okay, I want to now bridge it over and you don't want to run a vault. And then you're going to selecting me. But first of all, you're going to make sure, okay, well, the system actually makes sure that I have enough collateral to actually back your Bitcoin. So in the first step, you're gonna reserve my collateral, and then it's blocked for 24 hours. And the system will then generate a unique Bitcoin address for you. And with that, you're going to be able to send over Bitcoin to me. And then we use a transaction inclusion proof. So there's like a Bitcoin relay. So we have all the Bitcoin block headers on our parachain. And with that, we can basically prove that you send Bitcoin over to this generated Bitcoin address. And with that, you get your KBTC on Kusama. And the critical part in terms of security here is that you reserve this collateral, and once you minted it, it's like it's blocked. Like nobody else can issue with me and can reserve this collateral. And when you want to go back, essentially, then you just lock your KBTC on our chain, and then I, as a vault, I'm a service provider. I have 24 hours now to get you your Bitcoin. And how I'm going to do this, basically, when you do the request to redeem your Bitcoin, you're going to give me a Bitcoin address on chain, and I'm going to send it to you. And then I will prove to the parachain that within 24 hours I did that. And if I fail to deliver this proof, then you have a choice. You can do two things. You can either basically say, I want to retry with another vault because you really want to get physical Bitcoin back. Or you say, actually, I just want to use Kusama assets. And in that case, you can be reimbursed. So you basically slash my collateral. So the one that you initially reserved, you basically slash that from me because I violated my part of the deal, and you get more KSM back than the Bitcoin that you initially locked. So you usually would get like 110% of the value of Bitcoin that you tried to redeem as like an insurance.
Amazing. So there's not really any way it can go wrong. I like this. So that's
well, there's some nuances, but yeah, technically it can't really go wrong.
And I love that, as long as there's security in place, because that's such a huge thing. And I know, Kay, you kind of touched on this last one already, but I do want to elaborate here. So before we get into the whole vault side, which I will touch on kind of next, but you have had some major news in terms of launching bridges, which we did briefly talk about. So the Kintsugi Bitcoin bridge launched, and it's really the first trustless bridge on Kusama. So that's a big title. So can you elaborate here? Can you tell us a bit about your launch?
Launch was super exciting. So we launched KBTC 2 weeks ago, and as you said, it's the first trustless Bitcoin bridge that's currently deployed on Kusama. It's actually the first ever Bitcoin bridge that doesn't have a restricted set of custodians. So it's not just the first in Kusama, but it's the first ever such a system in existence, which was quite exciting to build and finally launch. Right now we are like in this early launch phase where we have a system-wide collateral ceiling. And I think right now we're at like $1.2 million worth of assets locked, and we're gonna raise the ceilings continuously, as we observe system stability. But yeah, it's been a real joy. We have 31 vaults now running that keep Bitcoin locked. We have the first, I think, seven Bitcoins or so bridged over. It's like 5,500 KSM being locked as collateral at the moment, and system seems to be running quite stable. And yeah, it's It's been really cool. We have the first, actually, we yesterday, I think they're still fixing it a little bit. We launched the first KBTC Rep BTC stable pool on Moonriver in Solarbeam. So you can now, I think if it's live right now, then you can swap KBTC and Rep BTC in like a stable pool asset. And next step is really like we want to integrate KBTC in as much project as possible.
You're delivering. Like
yeah, like I mean, it took us a while. Now it's like all the preparations and testing, it finally pays off, and
it's all coming to light, right? Like it's like it must be fun to see, you know, all this work you guys have done building up to it, and then all of a sudden, you know, you have all these launches and activity, and you know, it's really exciting because you have the community also kind of celebrating with you. So it's this big celebration altogether, and it's been a lot of fun to see you guys fly with this, really. So, I mean, we always talk about the good things, but what are some of the challenges and obstacles you've had to face so far? I mean, it can't be an easy thing to be building this, and especially challenges in terms of like following your roadmap or, you know, time. I know time is often an issue when you're building something so big too.
Yeah. I mean, there's been, I don't even know where to start. So I guess one of the core challenges in launching such a bridge as we built it is you have essentially like a marketplace where you have the vaults, right? They bring collateral, then you have users, the bridge over Bitcoin, and then you got to have DeFi protocols that integrate with your wrapped assets. And technically, I think like best practice in launching a startup is right, lean approach, so one step at a time. But really, when you launch something like that, you got to have pretty much everything in place at the start, right? You need to have the users that want to bring over Bitcoin. You got to have the vaults that bring the collateral, and you got to have use cases for your wrapped Bitcoin, because otherwise, why would users bridge over stuff? So one of the key challenges was like kind of coordinating all of these parties at the same time and making sure that it works together. And it's like coordinating timelines, coordinating the tech, because you know, it's still, we launched now, but it's still all quite bleeding edge. I mean, there's not a lot of XCM channels yet on Kusama, right? So this is something that needs to be coordinated with the other teams. You need to test it on testnet. You need to make sure your own tech works. And as like being the person responsible for the tech, it's I can tell you, like there's a lot of things that you only really find out once you launch in production. For example, we had this on launch day. We, by definition, how we were parsing Bitcoin transaction on our chain for these proofs, and we didn't really anticipate that people would send Bitcoin directly from exchanges. And when we tested on testnet, like you don't send Bitcoin from an exchange like testnet Bitcoin, because, well, nobody sells testnet Bitcoin. But then we discovered on launch day like this bug that if the Bitcoin transactions are very large, we don't actually parse the output properly. And then we fixed it. We went through governance and deployed the fix within like 12 hours. And these are the crazy things and the challenges that happen. But it's really, I'm super proud of the team. Since so Alexei and I were kind of out with being sick in the launch week, but the team handled it so well. That's, I think, one of the other great things to see, that, you know, there's challenges, but the team is like so well working together that even, you know, Alexei and me being out, like they still managed to resolve all of these challenges by themselves. Yeah.
I can't believe that you and Alexei got sick. It must have been a shock when you had the launch coming up. I can't imagine how you felt.
Yeah. Well, it was unfortunate timing, but I think, for the next launch we should be.
You got it done. You got it done still. And actually, this is a good time to mention too, now that you're mentioning the team, you are hiring, I saw. Is that still happening?
So we're hiring for a couple of engineering roles, and we're hiring for on the business development side. So if you want to go to our website and kind of check it out, which we're looking for people that are excited about Polkadot, Kusama, Bitcoin, decentralized bridges. Pretty much any.
Well, not hard to find in this community. There's a lot of people very excited. So that's fantastic. So I did want to talk a little bit about vaults. So because vaults are really the backing here, right? Behind the whole thing. So can you explain what vaults are and how they really help with the decentralization portion of it?
Yeah. Right. So the core thing is that very similar to how Maker's DAI work, right? Everybody can just mint new DAI in Maker, just provide collateral, mint new coins. It's very similar in our system where really anyone can run a vault. So you have like, a DAO can run a vault. Like an institution can run a vault. A private person can just run a vault, and the system like Interlay and Kintsugi, they don't differentiate between these vaults. They're just collateralized parties. They take Bitcoin into custody, but they all have to have the same requirements in terms of collateral, no matter where they come from, no matter what institution is behind that. It's all really the same. And by having like such a decentralized network of these vaults, you really you don't restrict scalability, and you don't restrict who can run these things. So people can just mint with their own vault and take their own Bitcoin into custody if they don't trust anyone else. And in the way that the system works is basically what we currently do is like you have to run like an off-chain client that automates most of these actions for you. On a practical basis, you wouldn't have to run this client. You can also just do everything manually, but it just makes your life a lot easier if you run the off-chain client and do everything through that.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So that's great that you mentioned, because that was my next question, was who can run a vault, but basically anyone can. And actually I did have a community question. I was going to slip this in later on, but perfect timing to talk about it, about KSM wallet multi-sigs. Are they able to control a vault?
That's a really good question. Yes, because basically a multisig is just another address. The only practical limitation right now is that the vault client, this off-chain client, this one doesn't have the multisig implemented, so it assumes like a single signer account. So that's something that is possible on the parachain, but not on the client right now. It's not impossible to integrate though. So it's if that's something that's like in high demand by the community, then absolutely we'd get it on the roadmap.
And so we already talked about, I was going to ask you about what happens if a vault fails, but we did talk about that. So security is something that's really important to you guys. And I think the community values that, because that's probably most people's, biggest question, right? But that's awesome. So what is what kind of value is there for someone who chooses to run a vault? Like, why would I want to run a vault?
Great question. Yeah. So I think the biggest motivator right now is for people to earn Kint tokens and Inter tokens. So there's a block reward for vaults, and they get the biggest share of the Inter and Kint tokens that are distributed throughout the entirety of the system, really. So that's the main thing right now. Second thing is when users mint KBTC and they redeem KBTC, they pay a small fee, and that fee gets 100% of those fees are forwarded to all of the vaults. So you get basically block rewards in governance tokens, and you get KBTC and InterBTC as fees, so you can actually earn Bitcoin, which I don't think there's a lot of decentralized protocols out there that allows you to earn Bitcoin. So those are the two main things. And then there's some, obviously, if you're a technical person and you want to keep your own Bitcoin in custody, then that's probably the other big motivator, is like run your own vault, keep your own Bitcoin in custody, and don't trust other people with your Bitcoins.
I actually didn't think about that aspect. I had heard a little bit about what you just said about earning tokens, et cetera, but I didn't even think about being able to keep your own Bitcoin. It's funny. I actually skipped over that part. So that's really interesting, but that's a huge part of it as well. So that's amazing. So I mean, governance is also a big thing for you guys. You have a great governance program. So how does your governance system work? Or is it different from like the governance system that we know already on Polkadot? And you do use the term liquid here, I've heard.
So we did quite some substantial changes to how Polkadot and Kusama governance works. First of all, there's no council. We don't have a council. We use this. We use liquid governance and we use optimistic governance. So what does it mean? Essentially, our governance system. Anybody can make a proposal, and there's no differentiation between different entities making a proposal. So every proposal is the same. Whereas in Polkadot, right, you have council proposals, you have public proposals, but in our case, everything's a public proposal. The second thing is it's optimistic, which means by default, all proposals pass. That might sound risky, but the main reason is most governance systems kind of suffer from this lazy voter problem because, why would everybody come online all the time? And our answer to that was, okay, let's just by default, let's pass proposals. But the way that the vote weighting works is that the more people start to vote from the entire people that are eligible to vote, from the entire tokens that are eligible to vote, the more the system goes towards a simple majority vote. So when, for example, only like 5% of the people that are eligible to vote votes, then you have to like 80% or so need to vote against the proposal for it to fail. But once you approach like 100% of the people that are eligible to vote, then you get to this 50% plus one to make it pass. So it's like it just dynamically, and the reason we are doing that is that for a lot of minor proposals, people will probably not be engaged to actually start voting, but you still want to innovate and make progress your system. But for controversial decisions, you really want to have this 50% plus one voting, so that the entire community, if they're like torn on an issue, that you go with a majority in either way. So that's the kind of the optimistic part. And then we do liquid governance. So in Polkadot and Kusama, you use your KSM and your DOT directly to vote in governance. What we did is we decided, also because we use optimistic governance, so you can make changes really easily. We adopted the way governance tokens, how they're done in Curve. So they need to be, you need to stake your governance tokens to be eligible to vote. So you stake Kint, and then you get vKint in return, or you stake Inter and you get vInter in return. And only those tokens allow you to vote. And the way that it works is the longer you stake your tokens, the more of these V tokens you get. So let's say for Kint, if you stake Kint for 2 parachain lease periods, so like 2 times 48 weeks, then you get, for 1 Kint staked, you get 1 vKint. If you only stake for like half a period, so 48 weeks, then you get 0.5 vKint. And if you only stake for like 2 weeks, you get like less and less. And that allows basically people that have more like a longer term committed stake in the system, they get more voting power. So basically, the core message is like the longer you stake your governance tokens in the system, the more voting rights you get. Simple as that.
Okay, so we're going to jump into to staking, and you've already kind of been talking a little bit about this, but so what benefits are there for staking with Interlay Kintsugi? Like, what is great about Interlay's staking system? I know there are differences with slashing here as well, and you did touch on this, but just elaborate if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the main benefit of staking is that you get to vote in governance. That's the main use case right now. If you don't stake your governance tokens, then you can't vote. It's basically you get like a block reward if you stake. And there's no slashing to our staking since it's only part of governance. You could only lose like stake tokens if you do a referendum that doesn't pass. But other than that, that's about it. There's some future thoughts and what we want to do with the governance token and the stake governance tokens, but nothing is yet set in stone around that. But we have some ideas around protocol controlled value, because I guess the main, just governance as a use case is a little bit of an older idea in the very young DeFi ecosystem. And I think some notions around, somehow for governance token holders and stake governance tokens holders to earn, say, on the bridged over Bitcoin from, say, secondary markets. So like having some sort of rights on LP tokens and trading fees on from other exchanges would be quite interesting. But that's very much still in brainstorming phase right now. So I can't really share more about that. Just tease it a little bit.
I like that. It keeps us on edge. So what if I were to say have vested and unvested tokens? How does this work?
You can stake both vested and unvested tokens. So let's say you have 10 tokens that are vested and 20 tokens that are unvested, then you can stake your whole 30 tokens. No problem.
So let's talk about future. And I know you can't mention everything here, and I totally understand that. But is there anything you can tell us about what's next here? So where are we in the roadmap? Can you just give us some information there?
Yeah, so we are in the roadmap basically on release the core, the very core, so bridge Bitcoin over, and now comes kind of the fun part in multiple directions. So one is partnerships integration. So we want to be like the gold standard for Bitcoin in Kusama, Polkadot. Then later on, Cosmos, Ethereum, all the other chains, which means right now we're talking with a ton of parachain projects. We already have channels open to Moonriver and Karura, and we're planning to onboard a new parachain connection, basically one every 2 weeks or so. So we're kind of waiting a lot for all the projects to come online and have their products ready, so we can bridge it over. Then obviously on Moonriver, I think Asta right now, and then now coming on Karura as well, you have a lot of other projects that deploy on top of the platform. So we're starting to integrate with those as well. So we have the KBTC, RepBTC farm on Solarbeam. There's some Kint trading on Zenlink and Karura as well. But yeah, basically, next step would be to be available in lending protocols. Big thing, getting KBTC as a collateral for AUSD on Karura, so you can mint stable coins using Bitcoin. That's going to come hopefully quite soon. And then, so this is just like the integrations. Then we have some core protocol innovations that we want to do. We just yesterday released like a white paper on a thing that we have like a code name LayBTC. It's like a next step to Xclaim. So the cool thing about Xclaim is that you have vaults, they're collateralized, you get fully fungible Bitcoin. But for a lot of DeFi use cases, you don't need fully fungible Bitcoin. So if you want to basically lock Bitcoin and mint a stable coin with it, like your Bitcoin is going to be locked. So you don't need to have it fungible. And we're close to a protocol that works where you can bridge over Bitcoin without collateralizing it and without actually ever giving up custody. Because right now you give up custody to the vault. But it looks like we found a protocol that allows you just kind of lock your Bitcoin on the Bitcoin chain, but you never give up custody of your Bitcoin, and you can still use it in other ecosystems. So there's like some core innovation, and there's kind of a third direction that we're going is like, what are we going to do with how do we increase the value basically of the governance tokens and all of the network shareholders? So there's some of these ideas around protocol controlled value, and some ideas around what if we want to allow others to use our infrastructure, our bridge, basically to bridge other tokens. Our bridge is built in a way that it already allows other wrapped assets. So the tech is kind of there. So you could imagine maybe if you want to bridge over Bitcoin Cash or Zcash or Monero. So these Bitcoin-like assets that potentially we can partner with others who want to deploy that on our bridge and write the relays for that.
You know what I love about you, Dom, is you are like so next step ahead in in what I have to talk about. So I'm so excited about this. I love how you elaborate, because my next question was actually about other assets we might see. So that's fantastic. So there is some opportunity, there is some potential for maybe other large assets to come into play with Interlay and Kintsugi. That's correct, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So the I think for us would be, for me personally, would be cool to get like Zcash or Monero, some of these privacy coins over and working. But there's obviously there's other Bitcoin Cash is a quite big one that's not really served right now. But basically any chain that's very Bitcoin-like, so basically chains that don't have smart contracts, they can really profit from the infrastructure and the setup that we already have in place. Other bridges, let's see. Not so sure about that yet.
Yeah. That's okay. That's okay. You're keeping me on the edge of my seat. That makes me excited for the future. That's huge. So you did kind of touch on some partnerships, but is there any other partnerships you wanted to mention, or?
Good point. Well, I think, right now, biggest kind of partners that we are working on in the Dotsama ecosystem is Parity, Akala, and Moonbeam team. So those are the ones that we have channels open with. We're part of the Parity Builders program as well, and I think there's all the parachain teams right now. The DeFi ecosystem is so young, so we're going to have a lot more collaboration so that the entire ecosystem as a whole can grow. So we can have all the protocols should be integrated. There should be lots of cool use cases for everyone, so we can make sure that we get all the liquidity over into the Polkadot ecosystems, and users have a great time in using the different protocols. Yeah.
Totally. I actually, I watched a crowdcast. I was fairly recently, I want to say maybe last week, and it had, I think James Wu, and it had Dan Reeser, and it had Derek Yu, Dan Reeser, James Wu, and Alexi on there. And it was neat to hear everybody kind of talk together, because, you always hear about these partnerships and integrations, but it's neat to hear everybody play off each other and how it all works together. So that was really incredible to watch, and I enjoyed it very much. But what I want to really kind of close this interview off with is you are just an incredible human as is. And so, like, do you have any advice for somebody that's maybe getting into computer science or development? Like, that's a big, PhD in question. Computer science is not a small thing. Like, what advice would you give somebody who's like, hey, I want to do this,
I guess it's a good question. It's a difficult question.
It is. Yes.
I think starting somewhere is always good. So I didn't do, like, I was super interested in computers when I was young, but my undergrad was actually in business information systems, and my first job out of uni was as a consultant with like a large consulting firm, and only then when I kind of realized that I want to do more tech, and then I started doing my master's. And really how I got into blockchain was just Ethereum was still pretty young. I read about the DAO before it got hacked, but it got me really interested. And I think if you want to get into computer science, what will help me personally is kind of get excited about like a project or like an idea. And especially in the crypto space, everything is so incredibly open. So you can just start reading about it, join some Discords, join some forums, and kind of read up on it and start building on it. Reach out to teams. So I don't know if you want to join into the team or build with us, like just come to our Discord. But I think most projects are like that. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in open source right now, and yeah, I think that's a good way to get into it with some sort of high level motivation project. And can be really anything. Crypto is doing a lot of cool stuff, but there's also tons of cool things happening in AI, machine learning, generally distributed systems. So yeah, I think there's plenty of cool stuff out there.
You know what? I think people always say like, when I ask these questions, because it's one of my favorite questions to ask, because I think, when you see people like yourself who are, well established and, have all this going on, and you're kind of somebody entering into a new industry, it can seem a little like daunting, you know what I mean? But it is as simple as kind of, just go for it or just do something, you know what I mean? And developing that passion as you go kind of leads you in a certain direction sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think it's kind of also accepting that at the beginning it's like you're gonna suck at something if you learn something new, but if you're okay with that, I think it's really cool to then see the progress. Like when I did my master's, I started looking into like formula verification, which is this super mathy field. And honestly, I'm still not good at it at all. But it's it really put things into perspective how far advanced people are. And I was doing my master's in computer science, right? So I should understand a bit about that. But still, like I joined these formula verification working groups, and I was like so far out of my depth. But it was great, like ultimately as a kind of a learning experience. So yeah, I think. Yeah, it's just get excited about the project, meet some cool people all along the way, and then it's gonna sort itself out.
I mean, it's an awesome place to network. I mean, just within like the Polkadot community in general, I've already met so many really interesting and amazing people. And and it is true, you do suck at things at first, you know what I mean? Like I'm not all that old, and my first crypto participation was a couple of years ago now, but in the grand schemes of most people, I'm still fairly new. And, you kind of, it's hard getting in there and feeling so fresh, but, it's amazing what you can learn in a very short amount of time when you're passionate about it, I think is ultimately, it kind of what I'm getting at. But yeah, that's fantastic. Dom, and I've been really excited to talk to you. So, my very last question for you is just that, do you have any closing remarks or anything that you want to touch on that maybe I haven't covered in my questions so far?
I think your questions were really, really good. So I talked about pretty much anything that I wanted to talk about. I guess closing remarks is I think like we're currently in a very early stage of like bridging and interoperability. So kind of my core message is that we should strive for having the bridges as decentralized as the blockchains that we're using, because that's the entire point of building this new kind of financial infrastructure. And if you're interested in participating in any kind of way as a user or builder or marketing or just spreading the word about that, I think that the Polkadot ecosystem is a really good place to get started with that, and kind of support projects that build decentralized bridges by using them or by building on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been so nice talking to you. I appreciate your patience with all the internet interruptions, but we were able to make it happen. And I'm so excited to share this with the community. And hopefully, maybe in a few months, I can touch base with you guys again, and we'll see what else transpires in a few months. You guys are working so hard, so I imagine more will pop up in the next little while.
Yeah, hopefully there's a bunch of things that we have shipped by then. So yeah, it would be awesome. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure talking. Yeah, great meeting you today. And yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dom. We'll talk to you later.